David sat alone in his small apartment, staring at his reflection in the cracked mirror. He barely recognized himself. His once perfect suits were gone, replaced by simple clothes. His designer shoes, sold. The flashy lifestyle he had worked so hard to fake had crumbled like a house of cards. And yet, for the first time in years, he felt something strange: relief. No more lying. No more pretending. But the shame was still there, clinging to him like a heavy chain. He couldn't escape the whispers, the online comments mocking him. His name was a joke now. He picked up his phone. Social media was filled with articles about him. The fake millionaire exposed. The man who tried to scam his way into high society. He scrolled through the comments, each one like a knife to his chest. Serves him right. I can't believe Amanda almost fell for this fraud. Men like him will do anything for money. David swallowed hard. His humiliation was complete. But deep down he knew he had done this to himself. And now he had to find a way to rebuild. Days turned into weeks. David kept his head down, working any job he could find. He washed cars, ran errands, anything to earn honest money. It was a hard life, but it was real. One day, while scrubbing a car under the hot sun, he heard laughter behind him. He turned and saw 3 men standing nearby, pointing at him. See that guy? That's David, the fake billionaire. One of them sneered. From private jets to washing cars. Life comes at you fast, another laughed. David clenched his jaw. He wanted to fight back, to defend himself. But what could he say? They were right. He turned back to his work, scrubbing harder. Let them laugh. Let them mock him. He was done pretending. That night, as he counted the little money he had earned, he realized something. This money, small as it was, belonged to him. He had earned it with his own hands, not with lies. For the first time in a long time, he felt something new. Pride. One afternoon, while David was carrying crates at a local market, he heard a familiar voice behind him. David. His heart stopped. He turned slowly. It was Amanda. She stood there in a simple but elegant dress, her expensive handbag resting on her arm. But there was no mockery in her eyes. No laughter. Just curiosity. David wiped sweat from his brow. Amanda, he said, his voice calm. She studied him for a moment. You're working here. Yes, he said simply. I'm earning an honest living now. Amanda nodded slowly. I see. David braced himself, expecting another insult. But it never came. Instead, Amanda smiled, just a small, genuine smile. I respect that, she said. David blinked in surprise. Amanda glanced at the crates he was carrying. You need help with those? David chuckled, shaking his head. I think I can manage. Amanda nodded, then turned to leave. But before she walked away, she said something that stayed with him forever. Keep going, David. You're finally on the right path. David watched as Amanda walked away, disappearing into the crowd. He felt something shift inside him. For months, he had been drowning in shame. But now, for the first time, he felt something else. Hope. He had spent so much time trying to impress people, trying to build a life based on illusion. But Amanda's words made him realize true respect isn't earned with fancy suits or expensive cars. It's earned with integrity. That night, he sat alone in his room, thinking about his future. He didn't want to be known as the fake millionaire forever. He wanted to be something real. So he made a decision. It was time to start over. Properly this time. David sat in his small apartment that night, staring at the ceiling. Amanda's words echoed in his mind. Keep going, David. You're finally on the right path. Could he really change? Could he build a life without lies? For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to dream. Not of luxury cars or designer clothes, but of something real. Stability. Purpose. Self-respect. The next morning, he woke up with a new determination. He went to the market, worked twice as hard, and saved every naira he earned. He avoided distractions, ignored the whispers, and stayed focused on his goal. But change wasn't easy. Some days, he felt like giving up. Some nights, he lay in bed, tempted to slip back into his old ways. It would be so easy to fake wealth again, to deceive people and live in comfort. But every time that thought came, he reminded himself of the humiliation he had suffered. The shame. The pain of being exposed. No. That life was over. David was going to prove to himself, and to the world, that he could be better. One day, as David was working at the market, he overheard two traders talking. "I need someone who understands business," one man said. "My cousin just opened a shop, but he needs a manager. Someone trustworthy." David's ears perked up. A manager. He knew business. He might not have been a real millionaire, but he had learned how businesses worked. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward. "Sir, I can do it." The man looked at him skeptically. "You. Aren't you the guy who pretended to be rich?" David's face burned, but he didn't back down. "Yes, I made mistakes. But I've changed. Give me a chance to prove myself." The man studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Fine. Come with me." David's heart raced. Was this it? His second chance. David followed the man through the market, his palms sweaty. If this worked out, it would be his first step toward redemption. They arrived at a small shop selling household goods. Inside, a young man sat behind the counter, looking overwhelmed. "This is my cousin, Emeka," the man said. "He just opened this shop, but he needs help managing it." Emeka glanced at David. "You know business?" David nodded. "I do. And I'm willing to work hard." Emeka sighed. "Fine. We'll try you out for a month. If you do well, you stay." David's heart soared. This was his chance. He rolled up his sleeves and got to work. David put everything he had into the job. He kept track of sales, organized the store, and even suggested better ways to attract customers. Slowly, business improved. At first, Emeka was doubtful, but after a few weeks, he was impressed. "David, you really know what you're doing," he admitted. David smiled. "I learned a lot from my mistakes, and I want to do things the right way now." For the first time in months, he felt proud of himself, not because of fake wealth, but because of real effort. He was finally becoming the man he wanted to be. One evening, as David was locking up the shop, a familiar voice called his name. He turned and saw Amanda standing nearby watching him. "Amanda," he said, surprised. She stepped forward. "I heard you're managing a business now." David nodded. "Yes. It's not a mansion or a private jet, but it's honest work." Amanda smiled. "That's good. I respect that." David looked at her, waiting for mockery, but there was none. Just quiet admiration. And in that moment, he realized he didn't need to impress her. He didn't need to impress anyone. He was finally enough, just as he was. David and Amanda stood there for a moment, the evening breeze carrying the scent of roasted corn from a nearby stall. There was no tension, no pretense, just two people who had been through a storm, standing on opposite sides of it. "You seem different," Amanda said. David nodded. "I had to be. I was living a lie, and I paid the price for it. But now I'm trying to build something real." Amanda studied him, then smiled softly. "That's good, David. I mean it." David felt something stir in his chest. Not love, not longing, but gratitude. Amanda had been the reason for his downfall, but she had also been the reason he finally saw the truth about himself. "I should go," Amanda said. "Take care of yourself, David." He watched as she walked away, disappearing into the crowd. For the first time in a long time, he felt free. Days turned into weeks, and David continued working at the shop, proving himself with each passing day. Emeka, once skeptical, now trusted him completely. One evening, as they were closing up, Emeka patted David on the back. "You've done well. I want you to manage the shop full-time." David's heart leaped. "Are you serious?" Emeka grinned. "You earned it." David had never felt prouder. Not when he wore expensive suits. Not when he sat in fancy restaurants pretending to be rich. This moment, being recognized for his real effort, was worth more than all the lies he had told. One morning, as David arranged goods on the shelves, a man walked in wearing a fine suit. David almost didn't recognize him. It was Mr. Chinedu, one of the wealthy men he used to try and impress. Chinedu glanced around the shop, then at David. "So, this is where you've been hiding." David stiffened, expecting mockery. But Chinedu only nodded. "I heard about what happened. You lost everything." David met his gaze. "Yes, I did. And now you're running a shop." David nodded. "Yes. Honestly, this is the first time in my life I feel like I'm doing something real." Chinedu studied him for a long moment. Then, to David's shock, he smiled. "Good. It means you've finally learned." David watched as Chinedu walked through the shop, picking a few items. He still couldn't believe it. This was a man he once tried so hard to impress, and now he was just another customer. As Chinita handed him the money, he said, if you had been honest from the start, maybe things would have been different. David exhaled. I know, but I had to fall to understand that. Chinita nodded. Keep going. You're on the right track. David watched as he left, feeling something unfamiliar. Respect. Not from others, but for himself. One night, David sat outside his small apartment, thinking about everything he had been through. He had lost everything, but in losing everything, he had found something greater. Himself. He didn't need luxury cars, designer suits, or expensive restaurants. He didn't need to lie to win love or respect. He just needed to be himself. And for the first time, that was enough. Months later, David had saved enough money to start his own small business. He rented a tiny shop in the market and stocked it with goods. It wasn't grand, but it was his. On the day he opened, people came, some out of curiosity, some to mock him, but a few to support him. Emeka was there, giving him advice. Amanda even stopped by, smiling at how far he had come. David looked around, feeling something he never thought he would, pride in honest work. Business was slow at first, but David refused to give up. He greeted customers warmly, kept his shop clean, and treated everyone with respect. Over time, people noticed. They started trusting him, buying from him, recommending him to others. Slowly but surely his shop grew. One evening, a young man walked into David's shop looking nervous. I need your advice, the young man admitted. I've been pretending to be rich to impress a girl. David felt a chill. It was like looking into a mirror from his past. He sighed and looked the boy in the eye. Let me tell you a story. David shares his journey, advising the young man against lying for love. He speaks with wisdom, explaining that true wealth is built on honesty and hard work. The story ends with David fully embracing his new life, content and respected, not for pretending but for being real. Final message. David's journey teaches us an important lesson. Love built on lies is doomed to fail. True respect and success come from honesty, not deception. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to Storytime with African Tales for more exciting and thought-provoking stories.